The Personal LaserWriter is a small, low-cost member of Apple's LaserWriter printer family. It has much of the same functionality and can perform many of the same tasks as other Apple LaserWriter printers. It's compact, lightweight, and affordable. This part of the videotape will present Personal LaserWriter's features, pointing out those features unique to the Personal LaserWriter, as well as those common to all Apple LaserWriters. The Personal LaserWriter comes in two configurations: Personal LaserWriter NT and Personal LaserWriter SC. Both configurations are similar in function to the LaserWriter 2 NT and the LaserWriter 2 SC. Unlike the LaserWriter 2, there is no Personal LaserWriter NTX configuration. Like the LaserWriter 2, the Personal LaserWriter is configured by installing either the Personal LaserWriter NT or SC I/O board. The Personal LaserWriter NT and SC are similar in many ways. Both the Personal LaserWriter NT and SC have 2 megabytes of ROM. The Personal LaserWriter NT has 2 megabytes of RAM, and the SC has 1. Additional RAM can be added to the Personal LaserWriter NT. Both the Personal LaserWriter NT and SC use the Motorola 68000 processor and operate at 12 megahertz. The Personal LaserWriter NT and SC both have a service life of approximately 150,000 copies and print at 4 pages per minute. This is half the speed and life of the LaserWriter Plus and LaserWriter 2. The Personal LaserWriter NT will support an MS-DOS computer and emulates Diablo 630 and Hewlett-Packard LaserJet printers. The Personal LaserWriter NT uses PostScript page description language and can also be networked. The Personal LaserWriter SC supports only Apple computers through the SCSI port. The SC will not support MS-DOS computers and will not emulate Diablo 630 or Hewlett-Packard LaserJet printers. The Personal LaserWriter SC uses QuickDraw page description language. The SC cannot be networked. The Personal LaserWriter print engine has a smaller footprint and is lighter than either the LaserWriter Plus or the LaserWriter 2. The Personal LaserWriter is 9.8 inches high, 15 inches wide, and 18.3 inches deep. The Personal LaserWriter weighs approximately 30 pounds. Now let's look at the major physical features of the Personal LaserWriter. This is the front access door. To open the access door, press up on the button and pull the door forward. Here is the toner cartridge. To close the access door, simply push the door forward. This is the status panel. More will be said about the status panel in the next part of the tape. This is the face-down paper tray. Printed sheets exit the printer face down and are stacked here. It holds up to 50 sheets. This is the face-up paper tray. When opened, the printed sheets exit the printer face up and are stacked here. It holds up to 50 sheets. This is the multi-purpose tray. This tray feeds single sheets and envelopes. The tray holds up to 50 sheets of paper or up to 5 envelopes. When manual feed is selected from the print menu, these sheets of paper or envelopes will be fed into the printer instead of the paper in the paper cassette tray. Finally, this is the I/O board, and this is the I/O board panel. The panel will be discussed in the next part of the tape. This concludes part 2 of this tape, introducing Personal LaserWriter Tour A features. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study guide. The ports, connectors, controls, and status panel LEDs on the Personal LaserWriter function similarly to those found on the LaserWriter 2, but may be in a different location. Now, part 3 of this tape will point out the ports, connectors, controls, and status panel LEDs and briefly review each one's function. We'll begin with the status panel LEDs and the connectors and controls common to both the Personal LaserWriter NT and SC. The status panel LEDs have the same function for both the Personal LaserWriter NT and SC. The status panel contains 3 LEDs, one green, and 2 yellow. The green LED indicates that the personal LaserWriter is ready to print or is in use. The green LED will flash during warm-up and while printing. Otherwise, it will glow steadily while the printer is on and functioning normally. The green LED will also flash if a paper problem exists as indicated by the yellow LEDs. The middle yellow LED indicates paper out. This yellow LED will flash when the printer is ready to print when using the manual paper feed. This yellow LED will glow steadily if the cassette is out of paper or the cassette is not installed. The last yellow LED indicates a paper jam. This yellow LED will glow steadily when there is a paper jam. Located inside the front cover, above the toner cartridge, is the print density adjustment. Move the knob to the right for a darker image and to the left for a lighter image. Normally, the knob will be in the middle of the scale. At the back of the printer are the AC receptacle and the power on-off switch. And finally, remove the I/O board to access the service test print switch. To generate a service test print, insert a jeweler's screwdriver into this hole and gently depress the switch. Now we'll review the ports, connectors, and controls unique to the Personal LaserWriter NT and the Personal LaserWriter SC. Located on the Personal LaserWriter NT I/O board panel is the Apple Talk connector. Use this connector to connect the Personal LaserWriter NT to an Apple computer or a local talk network. Next is the 232/422 Centronics port. Use this port for non-local talk applications, such as connecting the Personal LaserWriter NT to an MS-DOS computer or to emulate a Hewlett-Packard LaserJet printer. Finally, the Personal LaserWriter NT dip switch pinwheel. This pinwheel is identical to pinwheels used on SCSI devices to give the device an identification number. The pinwheel has the numbers 0 to 7. Each number corresponds to one of 8 possible dip switch settings. As with other types of dip switches, the printer must be powered off, then on again, for the I/O board to accept the new setting. The Personal LaserWriter SC I/O board panel has 2 ports and 1 switch. These are the SCSI ports. The Personal LaserWriter SC can only be used as a non-networked SCSI device. And this is the SCSI device identification number pinwheel. This pinwheel is identical in appearance to the pinwheel on the Personal LaserWriter NT used to reset dip switch settings. Remember to select an appropriate SCSI identification number when setting up the Personal LaserWriter SC, as you would with any SCSI device. This concludes Part 3 of this tape, introducing Personal LaserWriter Tour B, ports, connectors, controls, and status panel LEDs. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study guide. Setting up and configuring the Personal LaserWriter is similar to setting up and configuring the LaserWriter 2SC and the LaserWriter 2NT. This part of the tape will demonstrate how to set up the Personal LaserWriter. Begin setting up the Personal LaserWriter by choosing a good location. Choose an efficient work area that also meets the physical requirements of the printer. The Personal LaserWriter should be placed in a well-ventilated area away from direct sunlight. Ordinary household current is all that's needed to power the printer. Temperature should be kept from 64 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit and humidity between 30 and 70%. Choose a flat, stable surface area for the printer. Be sure to leave adequate room around the LaserWriter. Leave at least 15 inches in front to install and remove the cassette, to install a toner cartridge, and to use a multi-purpose tray. Leave at least 2 inches on the left and right sides of the printer, and leave 4 inches on the back of the printer. Now, the 4 inches at the back of the printer are needed for the power and the local talk or SCSI cables. as well as for the cassette cover, which extends 3 inches beyond the back of the printer when the legal size cassette is used. The shipping carton should contain a packing list, an Apple Personal LaserWriter SC or NT Owner's Guide, Apple Personal LaserWriter SC or NT Quick Setup Guide, a toner cartridge, paper cassette tray, a power cord, and 3 diskettes, LaserWriter printing tools, LaserWriter fonts number 1, and LaserWriter fonts number 2. In addition to these items, you'll also need a local talk locking connector kit, the DIN 8 version for the Personal LaserWriter NT, and for each computer to be connected to the LaserWriter. Position the Personal LaserWriter with the appropriate space around the sides. Open the front cover and remove the 2 orange shipping retainers. Next, unpack the toner cartridge and distribute the toner by gently rocking the cartridge from side to side. Grab the tape tab and remove the tape. Line up the arrow on the top of the cartridge with the arrow on the Personal LaserWriter and insert the toner cartridge into the printer. Now load the paper into the cassette. Be sure that the paper slides under the tabs at the front of the cassette. With the paper loaded in the cassette, slide the cassette back into the printer. Now you're ready to connect the Personal LaserWriter to your Apple computer. The Personal LaserWriter NT will be used in this demonstration. First, connect a Local Talk connector box to the Local Talk connector on the Personal LaserWriter. Then connect a Local Talk connector box to the printer or Local Talk connector on the back of the computer. Now, connect the 2-meter cable between the connector boxes. Either connector on the connector box can be used. Repeat these procedures for each additional computer which is to be connected to this Personal LaserWriter. Now, if the printer and a computer are more than 2 meters apart, connect 2 2-meter cables using a cable extender. If you're setting up a Personal LaserWriter SC, connect the printer to your computer using the appropriate SCSI cable, available as an accessory as you would connect any SCSI device. Remember to select a SCSI device number for the LaserWriter. Finally, install the power cord and turn the printer on. The LaserWriter takes about a minute to warm up, and then it automatically prints a startup page. As the page prints, check the status lights. Under normal operation, the green Ready in Use light will flash until the startup page is printed. Then it will glow steadily. All other lights should be off. This concludes part 4 of this tape, setting up and configuring the Personal LaserWriter. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study guide. The Personal LaserWriter has 4 major systems. The major parts and modules included in each system and each one's function will be pointed out in the order generally in which the printer functions. Knowing where each part is located and what each part does will help you to more quickly and accurately troubleshoot and take apart the Personal LaserWriter. The 4 systems are the Image Formation System, Control System, Pickup Feed System, and the Power Distribution System. Let's begin with the Image Formation System. First, the laser scanner assemblies. The laser scanner assemblies include 3 parts: the laser, lens, and scanner assemblies. This is the laser assembly. It generates the laser beam that's reflected off the rotating scanning mirror onto the photosensitive drum. Caution here. The laser assembly produces an infrared laser beam which cannot be seen, but which can cause severe eye damage. Always disconnect the power cord before removing the laser assembly or detaching the optical fiber cable. This is the lens assembly. It contains a collimator lens which aligns the laser beam into a parallel beam. The laser beam forms the page image on the photosensitive drum. And this is the scanner assembly. It's responsible for scanning of the photosensitive drum. It contains the scanning motor and the scanning mirror. Located in the front of the lens assembly is the optic fiber cable. It carries the laser light signal reflected from the lens to the DC controller of the PCB to indicate that the beam is about to start a new scan. This is the toner cartridge. It's responsible for dispensing toner at an even and uniform level. The toner cartridge contains the laser access slot instead of a laser access shutter as used on other Apple LaserWriters. Through this slot, the laser beam forms the page image on the photosensitive drum. The photosensitive drum. The primary roller, instead of a primary corona wire as used on other Apple LaserWriters. The developing cylinder, the toner bin, and the drum cleaning unit. Now, since the personal LaserWriter does not use a preconditioning exposure lamp, there is no preconditioning exposure shutter on the toner cartridge. Above the toner cartridge is a density adjusting PCB assembly. It adjusts print density by increasing or decreasing the voltage on the primary roller. Next is the fuser assembly. It's responsible for the fusion of the toner onto the paper. It contains the thermistors and the heater halogen bulb. These are the thermistors. They detect upper fixing roller surface temperature. And this is a heater halogen bulb. This bulb is responsible for providing the heat which fixes the toner onto the paper. And finally, here's the fuser PCB assembly. It controls the temperature of the heater halogen bulb. This completes part 5 of this tape, the image formation system. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study guide. In this part of the tape, we'll locate the major parts and modules in the control system and describe each one's function. And here is the I/O board. Located at the top of the printer, it controls communications between the printer and external computers and generates the user test print. This is the interconnect PCB. It connects the print engine and the I/O board. Located just below the I/O board is the DC controller PCB. This is the personal LaserWriter's command center. It controls and monitors the 3 other functions of the printer: power distribution, image formation, and pickup feed. There are 6 sensors in the control system. Sensor PS11, located on the mounting sensor plate. It detects whether or not the toner cartridge is installed and detects if the front access door is open. Sensor 901 detects if paper is in the cassette feeder tray. Sensor PS501 detects if paper is in the multi-purpose tray. Sensor PS13. It detects if paper is in the pickup unit. Sensor PS502 detects if the face-up tray assembly is open. And finally, sensor PS12. It detects if a sheet of paper exits the fuser assembly. Now, if this sensor is not activated in a set period of time, a paper jam is determined to exist. Here are switches 901, 902, and 903. They are the cassette size sensing switches. And finally, the status panel. It indicates printer operational status. This completes part 6 of this tape, the control system. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study. In this part of the tape, we'll locate the major parts and modules in the paper pickup feed system and describe each one's function. First, the main motor. It's the source of all mechanical drive in the printer. It drives a photosensitive drum, pickup rollers, and feed rollers. Next, the drive assembly. This assembly transfers drive from the motor to other drive assemblies. Connected to the drive assembly is the drum drive assembly. It transfers main motor drive to the rotating photosensitive drum. There are two ways to pick up and feed paper into the printer, from the paper cassette tray and from the multi-purpose tray. First, we'll look at the paper cassette tray pickup feed system. Here is the paper cassette tray. It holds paper for automatic paper feed. Behind the paper cassette tray is a cassette stop cover. It extends out from the rear of the printer to cover the end of an installed legal-size paper cassette tray. Here is the cassette pickup roller shaft and rollers. It picks up sheets of paper from the paper cassette tray. This is solenoid SL901. This solenoid controls the cassette pickup roller drive assembly. Next, the cassette feeder roller shaft. It moves paper picked up by the cassette pickup roller to the feeder assembly. This is solenoid SL902. This solenoid controls the paper cassette feeder roller drive assembly. And here is a cassette feeder PCB assembly. This PCB drives the paper pickup sensors and activates the solenoids. Now the multi-purpose pickup feed system. Here is a multi-purpose tray. When opened, it can be used to feed single sheets and envelopes. This is the pickup roller assembly. The pickup roller assembly has two functions. First, it moves paper from the cassette feeder rollers towards the photosensitive drum and transfer roller. Second, when activated by the solenoid SL501, it also picks up sheets from the multi-purpose tray and feeds them towards the photosensitive drum and transfer roller. This is solenoid SL501. It controls a single sheet pickup feed roller. Here is a separation pad. Now this pad helps separate sheets of paper from the multi-purpose tray as the pickup roller feeds the paper forward. Next is the transfer guide assembly. Now this assembly holds a transfer roller. This is a transfer roller. It puts a high positive charge on the paper, causing the toner to transfer from the photosensitive drum to the paper. The personal LaserWriter uses a transfer roller instead of the transfer corona wire used on other Apple LaserWriters. These are the right and left transfer roller assembly mounts. They secure the transfer guide assembly to the front access door. Next is a deflector. When the face-up tray assembly is closed, it deflects paper to the face-down delivery assembly. When the face-up tray assembly is open, it deflects the paper to the face-up tray assembly. Here is the face-down delivery assembly. Paper exits here face down on top of the upper panel. This is the face-up delivery drive assembly. Now this assembly transfers main motor drive to the face-up delivery roller. Here is the face-up cover assembly. When the face-up tray is open, it moves paper to exit face-up on the face-up tray assembly. And finally, here is the face-up tray assembly. When opened, paper exits here face-up. This completes part 7 of this tape, the paper pickup feed system. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study. In this part of the tape, we'll locate the major parts and modules in the power distribution system and describe each one's function. First, power switch SW11. It powers the printer on and off. Next, the power supply unit. It houses the power cord connector, AC power supply PCB, the DC power supply PCB, and circuit breaker 1. Here is the power cord connector. This is circuit breaker 1. Next is a fuser assembly power switch SW101. It cuts off power to the fuser assembly heater bulb when the front access door is opened. This is the high voltage power supply PCB. It provides high voltage to the primary and transfer rollers and the developing cylinder. Here is the high voltage contact assembly. It connects the high voltage power supply to the primary and transfer rollers and the developing cylinder contacts. And finally, the fan. It exhausts the interior of the personal LaserWriter. This completes part 8 of this tape, the power distribution system. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study guide. The Apple Personal LaserWriter has 4 major systems. Each system has several parts and assemblies you'll have to take apart and reassemble when servicing the Apple Personal LaserWriter. This program demonstrates how to take apart and reassemble each of the major parts and modules you will replace most often when servicing the Apple Personal LaserWriter. Be sure your workstation has an ESD mat and that you always wear a wrist strap whenever you handle any PCB. Here's another important reminder. Preserve proper grounding and continuity by replacing silver screws with silver screws and black screws with black screws. Be sure to read the general information section of the Apple Personal LaserWriter technical procedures before you begin take apart. Now here is how to use this part of the tape. View a take apart or reassembly procedure. After each demonstration, you'll be asked to stop the tape and perform the procedure just demonstrated. Using the Apple Personal LaserWriter technical procedures, perform the procedure. When you're ready, restart the tape and view the next procedure. Repeat these steps until you've completely taken apart and reassembled your Apple Personal LaserWriter. Before beginning take apart, remove the toner cartridge, paper cassette tray, and the I/O board. To save time, most screws have been removed before a procedure is demonstrated. Let's begin take apart by removing the top cover. To remove the top cover, depress the release button and open the front access door of the printer. Next, remove the stackability guide. Then remove the two screws that secure the top cover to the printer. Stop the tape and remove the top cover. Remove the I/O shield and the end plate. Locate and remove the screws securing the I/O shield. And lift it from the printer. Now locate and remove the screws securing the end plate to the printer. And lift the end plate from the printer. Stop the tape and remove the I/O shield and the end plate. Remove the fan. First, remove the two screws that secure the left nut plate to the inner cover. Next, cut the tie wrap that secures the fan cable. Be careful not to cut the wire. Disconnect J107 from the density adjusting PCB assembly. Using a small flat blade screwdriver, unlatch the holding pin that secures the left nut plate. Lift the left nut plate and the fan out of the printer. Stop the tape and remove the fan. Remove the mounting plate sensor. Begin by removing the two black screws and washers that secure the mounting plate sensor to the inner cover. Next, lift up the mounting plate sensor. Then disconnect connector J13 from the paper delivery sensor PS12. Disconnect connector J12 from the toner cartridge detection sensor PS11. Finally, lift the mounting plate sensor out of the printer. Stop the tape and remove the mounting plate sensor. Remove the density adjusting PCB assembly. First, disconnect connector J213 from the DC controller PCB. Open the three black cable clamps located on the side of the inner cover. Now open the black cable clamp located behind connector J212 on the DC controller PCB. Remove the two black screws and washers that secure the density adjusting PCB to the inner cover. Finally, lift the density adjusting PCB and connecting cables out of the printer. Stop the tape and remove the density adjusting PCB. Remove the power supply unit. Begin by disconnecting the AC in connector from SW11, the AC power switch. Open the cable clamp and remove the AC cables. Disconnect the 2-pin fuser PCB assembly connector from J101 on the AC power supply. Open the cable clamp behind connector J212. Now disconnect the 9-pin DC power supply connector from J212 on the DC controller PCB. Disconnect the 4-pin DC power supply connector from J302 on the interconnect PCB and remove the cables. Now remove the 3 screws that secure the power supply unit to the printer chassis. Finally, lift the power supply unit out of the printer. Stop the tape and remove the power supply unit. Remove the high voltage power supply. First, pull the plastic tray containing the high voltage power supply out from under the scanner assembly. Disconnect connectors J601 and J602 from the high voltage power supply. Next, disconnect the black cable connecting the high voltage power supply to the high voltage contact assembly. Finally, remove the high voltage power supply from the printer. Stop the tape and remove the high voltage power supply. Remove the interconnect PCB. First, disconnect connector J303 from the interconnect PCB. Now remove the 3 black screws that hold the interconnect PCB to the plastic DC controller interconnect mount. And last, lift the interconnect PCB out of the printer. Stop the tape and remove the interconnect PCB. Remove the DC controller PCB and mounting plate. Begin by disconnecting the following connectors from the DC controller PCB. J202, laser assembly PCB cable. J203, scanner motor PCB cable. J204, optical fiber cable. J205, cassette feeder PCB cable. J206, high voltage power supply cable. J208, paper pickup sensor cable. J209, fuser assembly cable. J210, main motor cable. Next, remove the connector cables from the 2 black cable clips. Then remove the 4 silver screws that secure the DC controller PCB to the DC controller PCB mounting plate. Carefully lift the DC controller PCB out of the printer. Now, remove the 4 screws that secure the DC controller PCB mounting plate to the printer chassis. Move the cables to the side. Finally, lift the DC controller PCB mounting plate off the printer and set it aside. Stop the tape and remove the DC controller PCB and the mounting plate. Remove the laser assembly. Begin by disconnecting connector J401 from the laser assembly PCB. Next, Remove the two recessed black screws that secure the laser assembly to the printer chassis. Caution: do not loosen the two black screws located at 11 o'clock and at 5 o'clock when removing the laser assembly. If these screws are removed or loosened, the laser assembly loses alignment and must be replaced. Now lift the laser assembly out of the printer. Stop the tape and remove the laser assembly. Remove the lens assembly and scanner assembly. First, remove the large silver screw that holds the scanner assembly cover in place. Now unlatch the 4 cover hooks. And lift the scanner assembly cover out of the printer. Locate the lens assembly and remove the 3 black screws that hold the lens assembly to the internal printer chassis. Then carefully lift the lens assembly out of the printer. Caution: do not touch the surface of the lens assembly. If the lens is touched or becomes dirty, it must be replaced. This part cannot be cleaned. Next, disconnect connector J301 from the scanner assembly PCB. Remove the 3 long black screws that secure the scanner assembly to the printer chassis. Finally, carefully lift the scanner assembly out of the printer. Caution: do not touch the scanner assembly. If the mirror is touched or becomes dirty, it must be replaced. This part cannot be cleaned. Stop the tape and remove the lens assembly and the scanner assembly. Remove the main motor. First, locate the main motor and remove the 2 screws that secure the main motor to the printer chassis. Then lift the main motor straight up to remove it from the printer. Stop the tape and remove the main motor. Remove the transfer guide assembly and transfer roller. To remove the transfer guide assembly, carefully grasp each end of the assembly and lift it out of the printer. Now remove the transfer roller by using a small flat blade screwdriver to release the transfer roller from the transfer guide assembly. Stop the tape and remove the transfer guide assembly and the transfer roller. Remove the fuser assembly. Begin by removing the 5 gold screws that secure the fuser assembly to the front access door. Then lift the fuser assembly straight up and remove it from the printer. Stop the tape and remove the fuser assembly. Remove the heater bulb. First, remove the screw and washer that holds the heater bulb to the right connector holder. Remove the 4 screws that secure the left connector holder to the fuser assembly. Then carefully pull the left connector holder and heater bulb out of the upper roller. Remove the two black screws that fasten connector J501 to the left connector holder. Remove the silver screw and washer that secures the heater bulb to the left connector holder. Now remove the small silver screw that secures the gold-colored spring leaf to the left connector holder. The spring leaf holds the heater bulb in the correct position. Set the spring leaf aside. Finally, carefully remove the heater bulb from the left connector holder. Stop the tape and remove the heater bulb. This concludes Apple Personal LaserWriter Take-Apart. Now reassembly will be demonstrated. Replace the heater bulb. First, slide the connector end of the heater bulb through the cutout on the left connector holder. Replace the spring leaf on the left connector plate. And replace the silver screw. Now replace the two black screws that fasten connector J501 to the left connector holder. Replace the silver screw and washer that holds the heater bulb to the left connector holder. Carefully slide the heater bulb and the left connector holder all the way into the upper roller. Do not exert force when replacing the left connector holder, or you may break the heater bulb. Now replace the 4 screws that secure the left connector holder to the fuser assembly. Finally, replace the screw and washer that holds the heater bulb to the right connector holder. Stop the tape and replace the heater bulb. Replace the fuser assembly. First, making sure that the connectors at each end of the fuser assembly mate with the connector pins inside the printer. Lower the fuser assembly into position. Then replace the 5 fuser assembly screws. Stop the tape and replace the fuser assembly. Replace the transfer roller and transfer guide assembly. Begin by placing the transfer roller inside the black plastic arms on each end of the transfer guide assembly. Then snap the transfer roller into place. Make sure the blue gear is positioned on the same side of the transfer guide assembly as the silver grounding plate. Make sure the 2 black plastic arms fit over the pickup roller shaft and the transfer guide grounding bracket is properly aligned with the pickup roller shaft. Finally, press down on the transfer guide assembly until each end of the roller shaft snaps into place. Stop the tape and replace the transfer roller and transfer guide assembly. Replace the main motor. Start by lowering the main motor into its chamber on the printer chassis. Then replace the 2 main motor screws. Stop the tape and replace the main motor. Replace the scanner assembly and lens assembly. First, carefully lower the scanner assembly into position inside the scanner assembly case. Replace the 3 long black scanner assembly screws. Now reconnect connector J301 to the scanner assembly PCB. Next, carefully lower the lens assembly into position inside the scanner assembly case. Replace the 3 black screws that hold the lens assembly in place. Now replace the scanner assembly cover and secure the 4 cover hooks. Finally, replace the large silver screw that holds the scanner assembly cover in place. Stop the tape and replace the scanner assembly and lens assembly. Replace the laser assembly. Begin by placing the laser assembly into position. Replace the 2 black screws that secure the laser assembly to the internal printer chassis. Then reconnect connector J401 to the laser assembly PCB. Stop the tape and replace the laser assembly. Replace the DC controller PCB mounting plate and DC controller PCB. Start by replacing the DC controller PCB mounting plate. Make sure that the 2 cutouts on the mounting plate fit over the 2 positioning pins on the inner cover. Then replace the 4 screws that secure the DC controller PCB mounting plate to the printer chassis. Next, place the DC controller PCB into position on the DC controller PCB mounting plate and replace the 4 corner screws. Now reconnect the following connectors to the DC controller PCB. J210, main motor cable. J209, fuser assembly cable. J208, paper pickup sensor cable. J206, high voltage power supply cable. J205, cassette feeder PCB cable. J204, optical fiber cable. J203, scanner motor PCB cable. J202, laser assembly PCB cable. Finally, replace the connector cables inside the two black cable clips. Stop the tape and replace the DC controller mounting plate and the DC controller PCB. Replace the interconnect PCB. First, place the interconnect PCB into position on the DC controller interconnect mount. Replace the three black interconnect PCB screws. Then reconnect connector J303 to the interconnect PCB. Stop the tape and replace the interconnect PCB. Replace the high voltage power supply. Begin by sliding the high voltage power supply tray halfway under the scanner assembly. Then reconnect connectors J601 and J602 to the high voltage power supply. Now slide the high voltage power supply completely under the scanner assembly so that the notches on the bottom of the tray fit into the slots on the printer chassis. Finally, reconnect the black cable to the high voltage contact assembly. Stop the tape and replace the high voltage power supply. Replace the power supply unit. Begin by installing the power supply unit inside the printer. Next, replace the three screws that secure the power supply unit to the printer chassis. Reconnect the 2-pin fuser PCB assembly connector to J101 on the AC power supply. Reconnect the 9-pin DC power supply connector to J212 on the DC controller PCB. Now reconnect the 4-pin DC power supply connector to J302 on the interconnect PCB. Replace the cables and close the cable connector. Reconnect the 4-wire ACN connector to SW11, the AC power switch. Finally, replace the cables and close the cable connector. Stop the tape and replace the power supply unit. Replace the density adjusting PCB assembly. First, place the density adjusting PCB in position next to the fan. Replace the two black screws and washers that hold the density adjusting PCB to the inner cover. Reconnect connector J213 to the DC controller PCB. And finally, replace all connector cables in the black cable clamps and close the clamps. Stop the tape and replace the density adjusting PCB assembly. Replace the mounting plate sensor. Start by reconnecting connector J12 to PS11 on the mounting plate sensor. Reconnect connector J13 to PS12 on the mounting plate sensor. Now place the mounting plate sensor into position on the right side of the inner cover. Finally, replace the two black screws and washers that hold the mounting plate sensor to the inner cover. Stop the tape and replace the mounting plate sensor. Replace the fan. Start by sliding the fan into the plastic fan holder on the printer chassis. Reconnect connector J107 to the density adjusting PCB assembly. Now slide the left nut plate into position over the fan. Be sure to place the finger of the gold grounding plate over the left nut plate. Then replace the two screws that secure the left nut plate to the printer chassis. Stop the tape and replace the fan. Replace the end plate and the I/O shield. Position the end plate and replace the screws securing it to the chassis. Now position the I/O shield and replace the screws securing it to the printer. Stop the tape and replace the end plate and the I/O shield. Replace the top cover. Begin by lowering the top cover onto the printer. Fit the tabs on the sides of the top cover over the edges of the left and right bottom covers. Next, replace the two top cover screws. Finally, replace the stackability guide and close the front access door. Stop the tape and replace the top cover. This completes reassembly of the Apple Personal LaserWriter and Part 9 of this tape. Please stop the tape and continue in your lab study. Troubleshooting a personal LaserWriter is a systematic process. There are 7 major steps to complete. The steps are: 1. Complete any initial administrative tasks as they apply to your service center. 2. Isolate the problem. 3. Resolve the problem. 4. Test the system. 5. Complete necessary paperwork as appropriate for your service center. 6. Pack and ship defective modules, if necessary. 7. Inform the user. In this part of the videotape, you'll have an opportunity to troubleshoot a typical problem. Since we're only concerned with isolating and fixing the problem in this part of the videotape, we'll focus on steps 2, 3, and 4. Now let's begin by isolating the problem. You've received a call from a customer whose personal LaserWriter will not print. At this time, you know that the LaserWriter worked fine earlier today, but won't print now. What would you do next? Begin isolating the problem by gathering more information about the problem. What kind of information would be helpful now? And since the LaserWriter worked earlier in the day, And since the LaserWriter has not been moved or disconnected since it last worked, several possible problems could be eliminated, but they should be double-checked anyway. After reviewing setup and operation, it's established that the laser writing printing tools, LaserWriter and LaserPrep, have been installed. And the LaserWriter icon appears in the chooser. The fonts have also been installed. Let's see if the local talk cables connecting the computer and the printer are installed correctly. Now, since no other computers are connected to this personal LaserWriter, software compatibility is not an issue. Paper is installed in the paper cassette tray, and a toner cartridge is installed. After several attempts at printing, the personal LaserWriter will not print. What would you do next? If the problem doesn't seem to be caused by improper setup or operation, the next action to take to isolate the problem is to refer to the main troubleshooting flowchart in the personal LaserWriter technical procedures. Power on the printer, wait 60 seconds, and observe the status LEDs. After powering on the personal LaserWriter, you notice that both yellow LEDs flash simultaneously. What would you do next? The main troubleshooting flowchart refers you to the print engine error flowchart. To check the print engine for errors, power off the printer and wait 3 minutes to reset the error and allow the printer to cool. After removing the top cover and the I/O board, power on the printer. Watch the sides of the front access door. Does the fuser lamp turn on and off? The fuser lamp does turn on and off. What should you do next? Based on the print engine error flowchart, you should turn to troubleshooting Table G, laser scanner malfunction. After removing the I/O shield, check the optical fiber cable. The optical fiber cable is properly installed. What should you do next? The next action to take is to check the DC controller PCB. Begin by jumpering connector 207 pin 6 to ground. Then measure the voltage between J202 pin 4, which controls laser power, and connector J202 pin 2, which is ground. The volt ohm meter indicates that there is less than 1.5 volts DC. What should you do? Congratulations, you've isolated the fault. The laser is not receiving the correct voltage needed to function properly. To fix the personal LaserWriter, the DC controller PCB must be replaced. After replacing the DC controller PCB, but before reassembling, be sure to perform preventive maintenance. When the personal LaserWriter is reassembled, set up and operate the LaserWriter. When you're sure the personal LaserWriter is operating properly, you're ready to complete troubleshooting steps 5, 6, and 7. Well, this concludes the 10th and final part of this videotape, troubleshooting the personal LaserWriter. Please stop and rewind the tape, then continue in your lab study guide.